have cities doing. Our cities work diligently for cooperation, for coordination, collaboration, all those good words. You know, right now our annual conference is going on here in the Twin Cities for the League of Minnesota Cities. It is being jointly done with the Alliance for Innovation, a national intergovernmental coordination group. They're having their national conference here with us as our state conference to discuss all of these types of issues. And given the shortage of resources for governments everywhere, obviously this is what people do. And in particular, at the local level, one of the most expensive things we have to do is tear up a street. So you don't want to do it more than once. So obviously we work very, very hard on that. And I'll get a little more into that. And as I'm sure you're all well aware, cities are very, very strongly committed to, interested in, and fighting for getting adequate broadband and internet services to all of our members and our customers. The challenge we run into, and the reason that I'm here, is that a lot of our work is done under a very stringent set of regulations and timelines. And it's because it deals with water infrastructure. So wastewater, stormwater, and drinking water, which economically we need to have the roads, we need to have the broadband, but public health, safety, and the environment and economic development are all tied to the water infrastructure. If you don't have an adequate sewer plant, you cannot build new buildings in your community. You cannot add an extension. That's not the case with a lot of other utilities. Other utilities, you can say, well, you're going to have crappy service for a few years, but you'll be okay. You can't build if you don't have a sewer to hook onto. If you don't have drinking water capacity or a potable water source, you can't have a habitable building. So, and if you ever fail to be meeting any of the requirements for public health, safety, and the environment, you have a very, very short timeline during which you must correct it, fix the problem, and get everything back running again. So we get very nervous when we start hearing that there might be a discussion of what could be requirements for what would have to happen as an additional step in those processes, because they're already very, very challenging, very expensive, and very difficult. In the governor's address before the last legislative session on the bonding bill, where there was a proposal for a massive increase in water infrastructure funding, and I'm sure some of you are well aware, but it's, for broadband, you're talking, getting 30 million to 100 million, trying to fight. We get more than that every other year for water infrastructure because it's such a huge expense. And most of that is just to finance low-interest loans. It's not even grants. It's just to try and get the billions of dollars moving to do these projects. The estimated need over the next 11 years, or next 20 years, is $11 billion for city wastewater and drinking water systems. So now that I've hung that little dark cloud over everything, we have a number of things that are in common with all these projects. They all use state and federal funds in some manner, virtually all, unless it's a very small project. They're all essential for public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. And they are all regulated by extensive federal and state permits and regulations. And they're all competing for very scarce resources that have to be done on a very short timeline. And the window of funding for these, as you'll hear from the PFA, can be very limited, especially for the grant programs. You better be ready to go immediately, or somebody else is in line to take that money. And so I would just ask this group, as you consider how to form policies on Dig Once, to remember that it's not always going to be something that works, and that delaying projects for a significant amount of time could have a much bigger negative impact on economic development in an area if the water infrastructure gets slowed down or delayed than we would have seen by having some empty conduit for future broadband development that takes an extra 6 or 8 months or another building cycle to get it into the system. So we do have concerns about this. We obviously will be working on it. Our cities are very interested in avoiding any additional infrastructure costs, and Dig Once is a very good way to do that. But in some cases, it's just not the right solution, and there are other things that need to be prioritized. The topic that Dakota County was bringing up, again, you're blessed, I think, by having non-lawyers here today, maybe. But
There wasn't one raises their hand.
Well, we're gonna just stay here and be non-lawyers, and they can be
There are a
as,
couple of them.
they can be as expert as they want. Don can cover that for us.
For Shannon.
However, cities have the authority to both do franchising and to have utilities. And among the types of utilities they can have, there's a very long list. Counties don't have those authorities. That's the big difference. Broaching that at a legislative level would be a huge undertaking to decide that you wanted to start allowing counties to have franchising or utility authorities. Might be a pretty big battle to discuss, and I'm not sure how many counties want it, is the other.
Yeah,
He's standing up.
Well, I just want to add to that. I mean, I don't hear me as saying
Yeah.
that Dakota County is seeking that authority.
Right.
I think, honestly, the attraction for us of a JPA with our cities and our CDA is that, you know, they bring some other authorities, we think, into a joint powers agreement that would be sufficient to get our business done.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I heard. I was just clarifying that the reason he can't do it is because they're under 394 and other utility, and we have 462 for land use, but we also have utility authorities. And I'm not gonna try and remember 477 or whatever the chapter is that it's in, but we have a separate utility authority statute. So, the last thing I would add is that when cities have projects going on, it is very easy to know that. If people want to be informed on what a city is doing, cities also have CIPs. They've got on the books what their coming, projects are. It's part of their budgeting process. It's also involved in public hearings. We're required to public notice every hearing on every decision that our local entities make. The EDAs and local CDAs all do the same thing. And Jeff will go through with you and tell you that that's true statewide. You don't have to go to every city's website to figure this out. You can see in advance which cities have water infrastructure projects that have received support and are ready to move forward. It's not all-inclusive, but it covers the major ones, because it's the ones that ask for funding from the state or federal government to support their project. And those are all posted far in advance, a year in advance of when the projects go, usually. So, with that, I'm not going to repeat a whole bunch of other things. I'm happy to try and answer